Welcome to Unposed. This show is made possible by the generosity of Mrs. Kristen Collier, her belief in this project, and her faith in the message behind it. Her support helped bring Unposed into the world, and it does not go unnoticed. I'm Amber Lane, an award-winning boudoir photographer, unofficial confidence coach, and creator of a supportive online women's group that's been thriving since 2017. Lately, I've been thinking about beauty. Okay, that sounds obvious, considering I've spent the better part of 15 years photographing women. Beauty has always been somewhere in the room when I'm working. But what I've been thinking about lately is something slightly different. Not beauty as performance, or something we chase, or something we use as a tool to compare, but beauty as something our brains and bodies actually need. I recently started reading about a field called neuroaesthetics, which is the study of how the brain responds to beauty, art, and aesthetically pleasing environments. And what the scientists who study this field are finding is genuinely so fascinating to me. The main takeaway of their research is that experiencing beauty, whether that's art, nature, music, architecture, or even a thoughtfully arranged room, can measurably affect the nervous system. In other words, beauty isn't just decoration, it's self-regulation. Researchers studying neuroaesthetics have found that when we experience something we find beautiful, certain parts of the brain become active. One of the areas involved is the orbitofrontal cortex, which helps process reward and pleasure. The same circuits that light up when we feel joy, curiosity, or life purpose are often activated when we experience beauty. Studies also show aesthetically pleasing experiences can reduce activity in the brain's stress centers. So when you walk into a beautiful space and your shoulders drop without you realizing it, that's not imaginary. That is your nervous system responding. This research tells us that engaging with art and aesthetically pleasing environments can help reduce stress hormones like cortisol and support emotional regulation. So beauty, whether we're talking about planting a garden or painting or a piece of music or even just the way the sunlight hits a room, can literally shift our nervous system towards calm. Personally, I find this incredibly comforting because it means beauty isn't frivolous. It's not a waste of time or anything else we're also conditioned to believe beauty is. It's functional. Another thing these researchers talk about is novelty. While routine is necessary for most of us to function somewhat normally, we naturally need to shake things up time to time. And this is what I mean when I talk about novelty. Something out of the ordinary, off routine, spontaneous or otherwise. Our brains are wired to respond to curiosity and experiences that are new with dopamine, the neurotransmitter associated with motivation, energy, and vitality. When we encounter something interesting or beautiful, the brain pays attention, which might explain why a beautiful place can feel energizing, why travel wakes people up, why the symphony and ballet and theater continue through the decades, while humans across every culture in history have created art. Beauty captures our attention and reminds the brain that the world is interesting. And when the brain believes the world is interesting, we tend to feel more alive inside it. We start to see beauty and excitement in everything around us because we train our brains to feed off that excitement. Once I started reading about the science of it, I realized how I had been actively practicing in my own life and business already, without knowing why it affected my clients and myself the way it did. At my boudoir studio, I often offer hair and makeup for my clients, which means they're sitting in a chair and hanging out for a while before we start taking photos. Now, that may seem like arbitrary time, but it's actually a very important part of my experience, establishing the vibe of the session. I started to fill these special dressing room spaces with things that personally made me feel good. Pretty fabrics, quotes and inspiration printed out and tucked into the corners of mirrors, gowns and tiaras and jewelry hung and displayed all over, twinkly lights and flower garlands, things that I thought might bring those same happy emotions to my clients. It changed the space from functional and strictly purpose-driven to an emotional fluffer for the session ahead. It allowed my clients to feel like themselves, in touch with a part of their core that's usually put on the back burner by the traits that we have to prioritize to get through the day. Making my clients feel comfortable and activating those beauty receptors in their brains opened up doors and broke down walls that I might not have gotten through otherwise. And it all started with beautifying the space. When a person steps into a room that feels beautiful, soft light, thoughtful details, space to breathe, they physically relax. Their shoulders drop, their posture changes. It's not because they suddenly feel more attractive, it's because the environment is signaling safety. Something else researchers in neuroaesthetics and environmental psychology talk about is how humans constantly scan our surroundings for cues. Our brains are always asking, am I safe here? Am I comfortable here? Can I relax here? And environments that are harmonious, things like natural light, patterns, rhythm, balance, tend to signal safety to the nervous system, which makes sense when you think about human history. For most of our existence, beauty wasn't separate from survival. Healthy landscapes were beautiful. Clean water was beautiful. A warm fire was beautiful. So our brains learned to associate certain visual signals with safety. And thousands of years later, we still respond. So when we create environments that feel harmonious, even in small ways, the nervous system can relax, which might explain why people instinctively light candles, hang art, plant gardens, decorate homes, take photographs. These aren't meaningless things. They are ways humans participate in beauty, and beauty, as it turns out, participates in our well-being. I think this is important because we live in a culture that often dismisses beauty, especially when women and traditionally feminine qualities or activities are involved. Beauty is often labeled frivolous, superficial, self-absorbed, but the science tells a different story. Beauty supports emotional regulation. Beauty activates pleasure circuits in the brain. Beauty reduces stress. Beauty can help us feel safe and curious and alive. So maybe beauty isn't vanity. Maybe it's nourishment. When we have these conversations, whether it's just you and me or a guest here too, I'm not just talking about my job as a photographer. We're talking about how we see ourselves, how we exist in our bodies, and how we return to ourselves. If beauty supports the nervous system, then maybe learning to see beauty in ourselves isn't vanity either. Maybe it's healing. Maybe it's a way of reminding the brain you're safe here, you belong here, you're allowed to take up space in your own life. So maybe the invitation here isn't to become more beautiful. Maybe it's just to notice beauty more, to seek it, to create it, to surround ourselves with it in ways that feel nourishing. A flower on the table, music in the kitchen, an indulgent photo session, a room that feels calm, a moment where you stop and let yourself appreciate something instead of just rushing past it. Because the brain remembers those moments, and the body does too. If this episode resonated with you, I would love to hear your thoughts. You can share them on Instagram, in the comments, wherever you're listening. And if you enjoy conversations like this about confidence, body image, creativity, and returning to yourself, make sure you're subscribed to the show wherever you're listening. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. This is Unposed. I'm Amber Lane, and I'll see you next time.